My name is Claudia Ringler. I'm with the International Food Policy Research Institute, and we are one of the CJR centers headquartered in Washington, D.C. And our focus is on international agriculture research. And IFPRI works a lot on food policy and food security, and I specifically work on water for food security. And in fact, IFPRI has worked for more than 4 decades on water for food issues, and we're therefore very happy to be a partner for the Water Changemaker Awards. And we'd like to contribute the work we have done on evidence-based policy for water solutions in the agriculture space. All water decisions affect climate resilience in one way or another. In our field, for example, building another irrigation system can increase climate resilience for farmers, but of course, this particular irrigation system could also reduce resilience of any downstream water users. The same, building a large reservoirs can be very important for climate resilience of cities through increased water supply and storage, for example, in drought situations. We have heard a lot about this during the Cape Town water crisis, but this same reservoir can interrupt migration flows of fish and thus reduce food security and to some extent resilience of poor consumers. And of course, it can also increase water evaporation directly from the reservoir. And again, so there will be some losers. I think it depends very much on the decision. I mean, if I, for example, put a little drip system in my garden to, reduce my workload of putting the watering can to the plants, I think that's a relatively easy decision. Building a huge irrigation system in sub-Saharan Africa is a much more difficult decision because the cost-benefit analysis, just purely on yields of rice might not really come out sufficiently positive for putting the system in. It could take many years to build it, lots of other challenges around that. I think one always has to take a much more holistic view of why we are building water infrastructure. There are usually multiple beneficiaries, sometimes also the environment, could be livestock, could be birds. So I think we just have to be very holistic in those larger decisions, and we have to be also very careful because, as I've mentioned, there are always losers in such decisions. In terms of decisions that I find particularly difficult to take, I think those relate to the development of water institutions, especially for improved water governance. Just as an example, we see now millions of smallholder farmers who are drilling their own wells, or basically get access to cheap well drilling, and are able to buy cheap motor pumps and maybe even solar pumps. But in terms of managing groundwater tables and managing those groundwater resources that are now being tapped by millions of water users, to do that better, and to do that right, we need new water institutions, and decisions on such water institutions and the development of such institutions has proven to be extremely difficult. At least for my sector, agriculture and water for food is, I think, easy to answer because agriculture is the largest human water user. So we have about 70% of global withdrawals are for agriculture. And in terms of consumptive water use, the share is even larger, more than 80%, and yet more so proportionally in the group of developing countries, which is where our mandate is. So as such, agriculture water users have the largest scope to affect water decisions. So any decision taken in our space will basically affect global water use. And of course, the larger the water decision is and the larger the space that it affects, the larger is the global impact. Yeah, in the short term, decision making and thinking has very much focused on addressing this health crisis, but it's of course very, very intricately very closely linked with water, because right now we don't have a vaccine. So the only real options to fight COVID-19 are to wash your hands as often as possible with soap and water, and of course physical distancing. So water already there plays a crucial role, and I do see increased interest by donors and governments to improve access to hand washing, and then of course other domestic water uses, sanitary facilities, etc.